Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Palapa Girivaradari Yasodanandana Prajajana Ranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Yasodanandana Prajajana Ranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Yasodanandana Prajajana Ranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Kishore Kishori ki jai, Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Maharani ki jai, Gonitai ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So this morning we're reading from Canto 10, chapter 70, texts 19, 20, and 21. So we'll be chanting 19 together. Tatro pamantrino rajan nana pasya rasar vibhum upatastur natacharya nartakyas tandavai pritak tatro pamantrino rajan nana pasya rasar vibhum upatastur natacharya martakyas tandavai pritak tatro pamantrino rajan nana pasya rasar vibhum upatastu natacharya nartakyas tandavai pritak. Please chant. Tatro pamantrino rajan nana pasya rasar vibhum upatastu natacharya nartakyas tandavai pritak. Tatro pamantrino rajan nana pasya rasar vibhum upatastu natacharya martakyas tandavai pritak. Tatro pamantrino rajan nana pasya rasar vibhum upatastu natacharya nartakyas tandavai pritak. Tatro pamantrino rajan nana pasya rasar vibhum upatastu natacharya nartakyas tandavai pritak. Tatro pamantrino rajan nana pasya rasar vibhum upatastu natacharya naraktasya tandavai pritak. Thank you very much. The word for word, tatra, there. Upar mantrina, the jesters. Rajan, O king. Nana, with various. Hasta, joking. Rasai, moods. Vibhum, the Supreme Lord. Upatastu, they served. Nartakya, female dancers. Tandavai, with energetic dances. Pritak, separately. So the translation for text 19 by the disciples of Srila Prabhupada. And there, O king, jesters would entertain the Lord by displaying various various comic moods. Expert entertainers would perform for him, and female dancers would dance energetically. And there's a very short purport by the disciples of Srila Prabhupada. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti points out that the word, the light's not very good here, so I have to leave it out, refers, among other things, to expert magicians. All of these different entertainers, one after the other, would perform for the Lord, for the assembly of great kings. And text 20. Madanga Vina Muraja Venutala Darasvanai Nantrur Jagus Tustuvascha Suta Magadha Vandinam. And the translation for text 20. These performers would dance and sing to the sounds of madangas, venas, marajas, flutes, cymbals, and conch shells, while professional poets, chroniclers, and panegyrists would recite the Lord's glories. And no purport, text 21. Tatrahu Brahmanai. Oh, my computer's changed a word. Kachit Asina Brahma Vadinam Purvesham Punya Yasasam Rajnam Chakatayan Kataha. And the translation for text 21. Some Brahmanas sitting in that assembly hall would fluently chant Vedic mantras, while others recounted stories of past kings of pious renown. Om Jnanatimirandasya Gananjana Shlakaya Chakshurim Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manopistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Ragutam Vitam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakha Vitamscha. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bando Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute. Tapta Kanchana Gorangi Radhe Vrindavan Ishvari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye. Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Vacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnebhyo Namo Namaha. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Ramapada Swami Iti Namine. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Navishesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So good morning. Srila Vishwanath, he comments on the first of the texts, the one that we chanted together, text 19. And this is his comment. So this is all in the assembly hall, part of Krishna's morning activities, and this is describing one section of his morning activities. So he's seated, and this is what's transpiring. So Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. Separate groups of jesters And here was the word that I couldn't read, upamantrinaha, dancers and magicians, natacharya, performed one after the other for Krishna's pleasure in the assembly of great kings. So the assembly that's mentioned here is that of the members of the Yadu dynasty, with whom Lord Krishna had entered that Sudama assembly hall. Srila Prabhupada writes, and this is coming from Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, where he breaks down something of the same purport of Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, where there were various persons with their artistic skills performing for the pleasure of Krishna and the Yadu dynasty, the various other kings that were present in the Sudama hall. So here's Srila Prabhupada. In the midst of all the great heroes of the Yadu dynasty, Krishna resembled the full moon in the sky, surrounded by multi-luminaries. In the assembly house were professional jokers, dancers, musicians, and ballet girls. And as soon as Lord Krishna, sat on his throne, they would begin their respective functions to please the Lord and put him in a happy mood. So, one has to pause for a moment because one of the qualities of Lord Krishna that's enumerated by Srila Rupa Goswami is that of his possessing the transcendental quality of being happy. So in addition to all the other qualities, some of them just we're getting it from this little picture of being seated in this assembly hall. Some of the other qualities are that of being opulent, worshipable, and all honorable, and of having the quality of being the supreme controller. This is, of course, Nectar of Devotion, Srila Rupa Goswami listing in a list of 54 qualities of Lord Krishna, although in that particular list he does 50 qualities. Now, the definition of the quality of transcendental happiness is the following. So here's the definition: transcendental happiness: being always joyful and untouched by any desires. So that's very interesting because you don't think of desires as causing unhappiness, but here's the definition: transcendental happiness is that state of always being joyful and never being touched by desires. So we heard that all these particular artistic performers, they're coming before Krishna in order to put him in a happy mood. So this is a very subtle thing that one needs to focus on, and it's of particular interest that if one compares regular humans, generally regular humans are longing for something or craving something or looking for some sensory pleasure. So it's a very interesting thing because here you have Krishna, this wonderful personality who is completely joyful and he doesn't have any desires, but yet all these persons with the artistic skills are going to be performing to put him in a happy mood. So, but there's happiness already. Happiness is completely present within him, but this is the description. Now, Srila Prabhupada continues with the narration. This is from Krishna book again, Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So this is Srila Prabhupada's writing. First of all, the jokers would talk in such a way that the Lord and his associates would enjoy their humor, which would refresh the morning mood. So it's a bit like sprinkling water. It's very refreshing. The joker's humor provides refreshment. The dramatic actors would then play their parts, and the dancing ballet girls would separately display their artistic movements. All these functions would be accompanied by the beating of madanga drums and the sounds of the veena, flute, and bells, followed by the sound of the muraja, another type of drum. So it's a whole sensorial experience, because there's all these various instruments, the beautiful sounds, and then there's persons who are very skilled. So ballet, girls performing ballet, so beautiful movements, jokers who set the stage by bringing the refreshments to enliven the mood, and the particular, here's the word used as dramatic actors, and actually it's supposed to be persons who dramatize the mood. So it's not that they're performing a play, but rather that they, through their bodily movements, they're dramatizing the sounds that are coming from the instruments. So all these functions, there's another musical vibration that's added to it, and that is the auspicious sound of the conch shell. So throughout all of that, it's like when we have a festival and you're hearing the sound of the conch shell, it's like this beautiful sound that just sort of punctuates all the activities. So in a similar manner, it's like a punctuation mark, the conch shell sound. Now, the professional singers, they were called the sutas and the magadas. They would sing, and others would perform their dancing art. So that's the same thing. So here you're hearing that accompanying the musical instruments, just the silent sounds of the ballet girls, the silent gesticulation of the dramatic actors. But here there's actually somebody utilizing their voice. So there's actually singers that are adding to the whole mood. So in this way, the devotees were actually, because they're all devotees, they're offering their respectful prayers to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So you can offer your prayers through dramatic gestures, through performing ballet, through singing, through joking, form of prayer. So it's, of course, this transcendental mellows because you're enhancing a certain transcendental happiness. So that's why it's considered to be respectful prayers, because you're in that mood in relationship with Lord Krishna. So it's very different, of course, from something that's in our regular setting. This kind of performance, generally persons leave it for the end of the week on a Saturday evening to go and see a dramatic performance or to go and see a musical performance. It's something that happens in the evening and is to provide some mental relief. So quite a different picture's being presented here. It's the refreshment for Lord Krishna and the kings in the morning. So just to get some sense of the prayerful mood that's involved in this dramatic rendition, there's an example that can be just looked at. It's actually from Gitavali, Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur's prayer, that is worship of Lord Chaitanya. And it's usually called the Gora Artik song, but it has a stanza which describes musical instruments. So I'm going to read. Shankha Baje, Ganta Baje, Baje Karatala, Madhurya Madanga Baje Paramarasala. So the translation is conch shells, bells, and kartals resound, and the madangas play very sweetly. So sometimes, one thinks of madangas as, maybe a crashing sound, But no, it's actually Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, and I saw a translation of Srila Prabhupada's too. The Madangas play sweetly. So the kirtan music is supremely sweet and relishable to hear. So that's the translation of the Sanskrit stanza that I read from Gitavali. So here, the instruments are playing and the conchal is sounding as part of a beautiful Arctic ceremony. So this particular song that we sing, it's usually done in the evening in the Arctic ceremony. And the Arctic ceremony in this particular song where Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur is setting the mood, he puts it this way. The Arctic ceremony takes place in a grove on the banks of the Yamuna, or the Jahnavi, the Ganges, to receive Lord Chaitanya. And his words are so beautiful that is attractive to the people of the world, all people of the world. That's Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur writing, just to give another example of how kirtan and all these beautiful instruments playing, it's kind of receiving and worshipping Lord Chaitanya. And in the same way, the description that was there is actually a worship of Lord Krishna in the Sudama Hall. So there's another occasion in which instruments are played when Lord Krishna enters the city of Indraprastha, where the Pandavas are celebrating his arrival with great festivity. So there's a description, this is coming from the Srimad Bhagavatam. Lord Krishna properly greets everyone. So here's a description. After Arjuna had embraced him once more, and Nakula and Sahadev had offered him their obeisances, Lord Krishna bowed down to the brahmanas and elders present, thus properly honoring the respectable members of the Kuru, Sanjaya, and Kaikeya clans. So this is all it's coming up in the 71st chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Then, and here's the description of the instruments. Sutas, Magadas, Gandharvas, Vansi, Jesters, and Brahmanas all glorified the lotus-eyed Lord, some reciting prayers, some dancing and singing, as madangas, conch shells, kettle drums, venas, panavas, and gomukas resounded. So again, there's this way of interacting with Lord Krishna is through music and the playing of instruments. And particularly the panava is described as a smaller drum. So there's a smaller drum. And the gomukas are, it's translated as gomuka horns. So it's a kind of horn that's adding to the sounds. So you can see the importance of the expression of one's devotion through the playing of musical instruments and singing for Lord Krishna. And then moving to text 20, there's mentioned that, and this is what's written in the Srimad Bhagavatam, there are professional poets, chroniclers, and panegyrists who would recite the Lord's glories. So on this particular point, I'm going to read the glories of Lord Krishna in a poetic form for this particular section that we're looking at today. So here is exactly what we've been reading, but it's been put into poetry. This is from Kalakanta Das, a beautiful compilation called A God Who Dances. So here's his poetry. So I'm retracing a little bit of what was spoken in yesterday's class, just in terms of in poetic form, to get a sense of what Lord Krishna has been exposed to through hearing his glories in poetic form. So, as 16,000 Krishnas and their loving bid their loving wives goodbye, each Krishna could be only seen by those who lived nearby. Converging at Sudama, the celestial meeting hall, a single Krishna entered from the confluence of all. Carrying on in poetic form. This meeting hall gave anyone who entered quick relief from hunger, thirst, illusion, aging, death, and every grief. As Krishna sat upon his throne, his own effulgent light illumined all around him like the moonshine fills the night. Carrying on, more poetry. This is what Krishna sort of was being exposed to. A host of entertainment instantaneously ensued. First, jesters pleased the Lord with an array of comic moods. Performers sang and danced with zest as fine musicians played. Then poets and historians recited Krishna's praise. So that was in poetic form, precisely what we're hearing by one of our contemporary Vaishnavas, putting in poetic form exactly what we're hearing. Now, Srila Prabhupada continues, and this is from Krishna book. Sometimes the learned brahmanas present in that assembly would chant Vedic hymns and explain them to the audience to the best of their knowledge, and sometimes some of them would recite old historical accounts of the activities of prominent kings. In this regard, that was Srila Prabhupada. So just to get a sense of what Krishna, this exchange between Krishna and his devotees, both through the musical accompaniment and the poetic accompaniment, there's also this recitation of some of the activities of renowned kings. So just by way of getting some insight, I'm going to recount something from the Srimad Bhagavatam of a particular king and how, and this was actually a story that Krishna himself narrated, but we're hearing that Brahmanas would recount these particular historical moments of great kings. So here is a narrative that sages would recite concerning a conversation between the greatly powerful King Yadu and an Avaduta. So here's the story. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, Lord Krishna actually recites the story, but this is to get some sense of what Krishna's hearing in the morning. So and the reason Krishna actually, just as an interesting note, because everything has the significance of enhancing the mood, the devotional mood between the devotee who's performing and Lord Krishna. So Lord Krishna, when he actually tells this particular story or narrates the story, he does it to Uddhava, and it's to show how rational intelligence can be utilized in Bhakti Yoga to acquire Vedic knowledge, and how ultimately an intelligent person will come to the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So you'll hear it's a very interesting narration because there are reasons being given throughout, and there's a kind of logical connection between a point that's made and the broader picture. So let me recount the story as Lord Krishna does it, and just to give us some insight into what Lord Krishna's been exposed to in the morning with the Brahmanas recounting some of the kings of renown and some of their activities. So this is Maharaj Yadu. He once observed a certain Brahmana Avaduta who appeared to be quite young and learned, wandering around fearlessly. Being himself most learned in spiritual subjects, the king took the opportunity and inquired from him as follows: O Brahmana, I see that you are not engaged in any practical religious activity, and yet you have acquired a most expert understanding of all things and all people within this world. Kindly tell me, how did you acquire this extraordinary intelligence? And why are you traveling freely throughout the world, behaving as if you were a child? So, very intelligent question has been posed based on observation. So, generally, human beings work hard to cultivate, and this is the king's insight. So, um, hearing just understanding that what is the important emphasis is the particular king and their insight and what made them of such great renown. And in the case of King Yadu, it was his highly intelligent inquiries. So here he's inquiring from the Brahmana. So notice he's generalizing. Generally, human beings work hard to cultivate religiosity, economic development, sense gratification, and also knowledge of the soul. And the usual motive is to increase the duration of their lives, acquire fame, and enjoy material opulence. So he's giving the reason why human beings actually even make endeavor. You, however, capable, learned, expert, handsome, and most eloquent, are not engaged in doing anything, nor do you desire anything. Rather, you appear stupefied and maddened as if you were a ghostly creature. Although all people within the material world are burning in the great forest fire of lust and greed, you remain free and also are not burned by that fire. You are just like an elephant who takes shelter from a forest fire by standing within the water of the Ganges. So notice in this particular narration, the king's giving his observations very clearly, what he's observing in the person standing before him. And he's seen a contradiction because it seems to go against what is the regular motive for by which humans function. But yet, even though he's not engaging in the activities that humans normally function in, he seems to have all the extraordinary attributes that would permit him to be highly successful. So, hence the questioning. O Brahmana, we see that you are devoid of any contact with material enjoyment and that you are traveling alone without any companion or family members. Therefore, because we are sincerely inquiring from you, please tell us the cause of the great ecstasy that you are feeling within yourself. So notice the king is quite astute and insightful. The intelligent King Yadu, always respectful to the Brahmanas, this is Krishna commenting, waited with bowed head as the Brahmana, pleased with the king's attitude, began to reply. So here's the responses of the Brahmana. My dear king, with my intelligence, I have taken shelter of many spiritual masters. Having gained transcendental understanding from them, I now wander about the earth in a liberated condition. Please listen as I describe them to you. So here's the Brahmana listing his spiritual masters. O king, I've taken shelter of 24 gurus who are the following: earth, air, sky, water, fire, moon, sun, pigeon and python, the sea, moth, honeybee, elephant and honey thief, the deer, the fish, the prostitute Pingala, the kukura bird, and the child, and the young girl, serpent, spider, and wasp. My dear king, by studying their activities, I have learned the science of the self. Please listen, O son of Maharaj Jayati, O tiger among men, as I explain to you what I have learned from each of these gurus. So this is This is an example of the kind of narration that Lord Krishna would have been hearing in the morning. So here's the Brahmana responding. A sober person, even when distressed by other living beings, should understand that his aggressors are acting helplessly under the control of God, and thus he should never be distracted from progress on his own path. This rule I have learnt from the earth. I personally found this particular statement on the part of the Brahmana incredibly insightful, because it requires quite a lot of strength to actually see that when aggression comes one's way, that actually it's under the control of Krishna, and that it need not distract one in the least from the path one is on, one's own spiritual path. So here's the Brahmana continuing. A saintly person should learn from the mountain to devote all his efforts to the service of others and to make the welfare of others the sole reason for his existence. Similarly, as the disciple of the tree, he should learn to dedicate himself to others. A learned sage should take his satisfaction in the simple maintenance of his existence and should not seek satisfaction through gratifying his material senses. In other words, one should care for the material body in such a way that one's higher knowledge is not destroyed, and so that one's speech and mind are not deviated from self-realization. Continuing, even a transcendentalist is surrounded by innumerable material objects which possess good and bad qualities. However, one who has transcended material good and evil should not become entangled even when in contact with the material objects. Rather, he should act like the wind. So, uh, this is obviously highly significant because, wind may appear to be carrying the fragrance of a forest as it's passing through a forest with flowers, but then it will move on. That fragrance is left behind as it moves elsewhere. So the same thing. One's not actually holding on to anything. Although a self-realized soul may live in various material bodies while in the world, experiencing their various qualities and functions, he is never entangled. Just as the wind, which carries various aromas, does not actually mix with them. And carrying on. A thoughtful sage, even while living within a material body, should understand himself to be pure spirit soul. Similarly, one should see that the spirit soul enters within all forms of life, both moving and non-moving, and that the individual souls are thus all-pervading. The sage should further observe that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the super soul and is simultaneously present within all things. Both the individual soul and the super soul can be understood by comparing them to the nature of the sky. Although the sky extends everywhere and everything rests within the sky does not mix with anything, nor can it be divided by anything. O King, a saintly person is just like the water because he is free from all contamination. Gentle by nature and by speaking creates a beautiful vibration like that of flowing water. Just by seeing, touching, or hearing such a saintly person, the living entity is purified, just as one is cleansed by contact with pure water. So, this was just my reciting from the Srimad Bhagavatam, a narration of a very renowned king, King Yadu, inquiring from a Brahmana that he's seeing, and his particular renown lay in this capacity to inquire so intelligently. And of course, this is the kind of narration that Lord Krishna would have been exposed to in the morning by the Brahmanas reciting the renown of particular kings. So here was the descendant of King Yayati. So this was some insight into these rather simple verses, just to get a sense of this section of Lord Krishna's activities in the morning and the happy mood that was to be generated by the activities. So if there's any thought, expansion, query connected to these verses, please proceed.
I find it. Can Naveen bring loud the microphone? I find it quite amusing that this is an example. Lord Krishna is setting a perfect example of a king, and this is the daily sort of governance. He's going into the main hall in which governance happened in the city of Dwarka, the assembly hall. And it's like going into Congress or the Senate, the main building where legislation happens and where the whole thing, daily the daily activities of governance. And then the first thing that happens is all this entertainment to create a very light, happy mood. And of course, the entertainment is not frivolous, but it's an entertainment that is that is to glorify the personality of God. So, but the fact that that's an example of governance, a perfect example of governance. So the first thing that you come is, just create this atmosphere of enlightenment, light, and happiness, and all these things. So it's quite something to to possibly think how to set up things when you do this very serious work of governance. Also make sure that the mood is positive, is happy, is open, like that. It's not necessarily politics and schemes and advocating for this or that. All these different power struggles that happens. In situations that you see how places of governance take place.
Oh,
I
that's
thought it
a
was
wonderful insight. Yes, indeed, immediately, just through your description, comes the visual of Congress, which one actually can see visually, and one can even witness this particular visual channel where you can actually observe Congress in progress. And generally, it's a kind of circular formation and seats and persons seated very seriously, and speakers are called at a particular moment to give their views on a particular topic. And yes, one doesn't see what precedes that, how the whole thing begins. But that was very insightful on your part to just point out that it's actually the place of governance. So it would be equivalent to sitting in Congress. So it's Lord Krishna surrounded with all the kings, but it begins with, I guess, an emphasis on observing and hearing everything that is beautiful So seeing beautiful movements, hearing beautiful instruments, even lightheartedness on the part of jokers. It's actually transcendental mellows that are being enhanced. So it remains on the in a space that's concerned with self-realization, and even the fact that uh, the Brahmanas recite a narrative that exemplifies the glory of a great king. It sets the mood for looking to the nobility of previous ancestors and their actions in the world. So there's a serious note that comes in too. And the next, what's coming up next is a, a problem is presented to Krishna and the kings, and indeed just taking into account that they're in a happy mood, and then how they're going to actually tackle the big problem that comes and is presented, which is coming up immediately after this. So yes, thank you very much for that nice insight.
Hare Krishna.
Hare
Thank you,
Krishna.
Mataji. I like that point. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, I heard a similar thing like what you said just now. Suta, Magadha, Vandi, these three names are used in places where these people are either genealogical historians or they are people who praise the king's activities. Uh, and there, Srila Prabhupada says that the kings were Raja Rishi kings, saintly kings. So, the praise done by these Brahmins is also very valuable to encourage the king to do such good activities for the welfare of the society and bringing the society closer to God. So, Prabhupada says that uh, praise of Krishna is the most glorious, but even praising devotee kings is also glorious. He says that because then they get encouragement to do such activities. And one another point you made, I liked very much. For any activity, the ambience has to be created. Ambience. Like, for example, just prior to the Kurukshetra war, the kettle drums are played, trumpets are blown. And that creates a mood for the chivalrous nature to be aroused in the Kshatriya men like that. Similarly, in the fifth canto, we read when the dacoits brought Jadabharata in front of Mother Kali, Durga, to offer as a sacrifice. At that time, they play some instruments. Tanka, takara, tanka, takara, tanka. Like that, they play some instruments. So Prabhupada says that these kind of settings are done in order to create the ambience for a certain activity. So those fellows, of course, they play that in order to, even when they cut a goat or when they do such sacrifices, they play certain instruments. At that time, everybody knows what is that ambience corresponding to. People know. So there is sacred ambience, there is bad ambience, both. So each ambience actually promotes and inspires the people to do such a thing. Just like nowadays, people have parties. For parties, they create a certain type of passionate ambience for parties. So those are mundane. In the same manner, on the other hand, like we have a temple, and there's a Sanskrit word which we call as Uddipan. Uddipan actually means the ambience which stimulates us to come one step closer to Lord, like that. So when in Krishna's palace, the ambience that is created, as you said, or in the first canto, 11th chapter, when Krishna is entering Dwaraka, you know, all the citizens coming and creating a certain ambience to welcome Krishna. So all this ambience actually stimulates remembrance of the Lord more. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. That was very nice, making the connection with various other moments, such as prior to the Kurukshetra battle, and also bringing up the points that the particular where the instruments play will incite a certain kind of mood, and it's understood what the mood is. And particularly, I appreciated your point that in the case of the Kshatriyas, the stimulation is, to go out and perform heroic deeds because that's their nature. So, yeah, and I, I found it interesting that this narration um, of historical kings is actually presented to the whole assembly of kings. It's because it means that the intelligence is being stimulated. So it's not only purely on the sort of transcendental emotional level, but also the intelligence is being stimulated, to think very rationally. So I was appreciating also that aspect. Thank you very much for your very kind expansion. Yes.
Um, so the lesson today is that are we glorifying the spiritual, I guess you would say, celebratory practices to prepare for the king, or are we more emphasizing that the mode of the music and the sound vibrations that stimulate um, the entirety of the royal holy presence?
Well, it's both. Both the particular sounds. I mean, that there was an elaborate description in the beginning of the various instruments that were being played. There was accompanying the various instruments was the auspicious sound of the conch shell. So one understands that it's not ordinary kind of stimulation. And the stimulation, because it's an assembly of kings, Krishna and kings, they're rulers. So their particular task in society is to uplift the entire population. So it's not necessarily that now they're being incited to go to battle. Some may have been. In fact, the problem that presents itself very soon is they are going to have to go into battle. But their purpose is to uplift the entire society to God consciousness, Krishna consciousness. So the instruments that are being played, together with the visuals of, the performance of ballet, the particular actors who make dramatic gestures that emphasize the sounds. It's all actually to create a feeling of happiness within the rulers so that they are in a good frame of mind to perform their duties.
I see that all of this would distract them from their minds wandering into any other nonsensical ideas, because many times, like in today's world, there is music, and of course, some of it can, in a scholar's sense, would not consider it music, because music should always uplift and should always purify and engage in intelligence, but of course, sometimes it's not the case. So, all of the preparation and the music and everything, uh, because of the particular instruments like the conch shell, which Krishna used, they are holy. And would you say that those particular instruments that they're using, just because it's from an Indian culture, they're superior or more holy, or because Krishna was suggesting that they use them?
Well, one has to remember that present in the assembly is a whole group of brahmanas. And part of their function is to recite Vedic mantras. So there's the one blends seamlessly with the other. And the usage of the particular instruments is they're particular instruments that are used to glorify Lord Krishna, and the playing of the instruments enhances the relationship one has with Lord Krishna. So, should it be a kettle drum, a madanga, a veena, a flute versus an organ, a trumpet, I don't know, some other, a guitar. um, these are the instruments that are listed as, I guess, the producing the auspicious atmosphere that allows these kings to be both deeply thoughtful and also filled with vigor to perform their particular task, and also using their intelligence thanks to the intervention also of the Vedic mantras being chanted and the narrations of kings of great renown. So it's a whole perfect package, you could say. And why it's not contemporary instruments? Well, these are the ones that are and I wouldn't put it down to using the word Indian because we're talking about spiritual culture. So it's a culture that's working on developing one's relationship and devotional love towards the Supreme Personality of God. So it's not uh, connected to ethnicity as such.
Yeah, I understand. I understand what you're saying. Because even in a Western culture, when you listen to the angelic music, it's always in the major chords, which are bright, and the diminished chords are dark. So those scales and those tones during those times were more pentatonic. They didn't have the half and the steps in the same place. They're a different they are totally structured differently. So when they're playing the music, it's quite different because those particular pentatonic scales and those sounds are a little different than the Western world. But um, I always feel the intent, of course, and what you choose as music is also good. But during that time, it was for a particular purpose, and it was wholly just like what we do here in the temple. I always like to feel that in other environments, the music can be considered auspicious as well. Would you agree?
Well, auspiciousness has to do with the relationship that one has with the Supreme Personality of Godhead and how that relationship is being enhanced. So, if the purpose of the music is to enhance that relationship, then that's what makes it auspicious. It's the purpose for which it's being used. That's what the emphasis is. And I think H.G.Krsnarcana wanted to ask something.
Thank you for the class.
Of course,
I,
there's musicians present, so I know that this is a topic that they may have much more insight in terms of the particular finesse and refinement of the usage of the instruments. Go ahead, Vaishnav Sivananda.
um, I had thought of um, this scene that you described. For some reason, put my mind on the unity and diversity because there were so many different things going on, but it was all focused on well, the king or just like Krishna. Um, so what came to mind was the word grave. When Prabhupada would speak about being grave, was not to lose, like your natural qualities of your personality, um, and then just be serious about Krishna consciousness. You don't have to change who you are so much as long as you stay, serious about your spiritual life, serious about spirituality. So it just kind of made me think about the unity, keeping the unity in such diversities, because there were gestures and people doing so many different things with this jovial personality. Um, so I was wondering if
Yes, I guess that's a good point that when there is diversity, because certainly, one of the statements was made that Um, it can please all people in all the world, all people in all the world. So, and taking into account that the world has a lot of diversity, I mean, different nationalities, different cultures, different ways of doing things, which, of course, then also culture has to do with the preference for the sounds. And so the particular thing that brings the unity aspect together is the intention of glorifying the Supreme Personality of Godhead in one's relationship with Him. So the particular persons who are skilled, who have particular artistic skills, when they're using that particular artistic skill to enhance their relationship and please the Supreme Personality of Godhead through that skill, that is what's actually allowing for the unity. It's that as an individual, you're making that decision to actually perform your art for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So that is what brings the unity. Persons having similar intentions despite their different modes of expression. Yeah. Well, thank you very much for your very kind attention. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.